This is the San Antonio Current. By the way, it's Friday. It's Anything Goes Friday. Feel free to call on any topic you'd like. Our telephone number, 202-808-9925. And, of course, you can drop into our free live chat room over at thomhartmann.com, et cetera, et cetera. But this is really interesting. A new study shows that the number of women dying from pregnancy complications in Texas has doubled, a trend that seems isolated to the lone states. This was published in the September issue of Obstetrics and Gynecology, a peer-reviewed medical journal, the official publication of the journal, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And they note that while the study's authors don't speculate as to what is causing this trend, they do note an interesting coincidence in timing. Maternal mortality rates, in other words, women dying because they're pregnant, soared right after the Texas legislature slashed funding to Planned Parenthood in 2011. 5 years ago, legislators cut the state's family planning budget from $115 million to $37 million, which was just the beginning of a years-long campaign to defund Planned Parenthood in the states. And now they're discovering that ever since they defunded Planned Parenthood, women are dying twice as frequently from pregnancy in Texas. And only in Texas, not in nearby states. Planned Parenthood had to shut down, I think it was 37 Planned Parenthood facilities around the states. These were facilities that were principally supplying things like prenatal care to poor women and women of color. The vast majority of what Planned Parenthood does has nothing to do with abortion. It has to do with keeping women healthy, particularly women of childbearing age. I mean, it is Planned Parenthood after all. And although now, they're offering all kinds of other services, mammograms and cervical cancer tests and pap smears and all that kind of stuff. But it's or referring them, people getting them to people. But once the Texas legislature cut funding for Planned Parenthood, women started dying. In other words, Greg Abbott has blood on his hands. I mean, this is like Charlene Dill dying in Florida because she was working 3 jobs. She had 2 kids. She couldn't afford her she had a heart condition that required regular medication to keep her heart rhythm normal, and she couldn't afford the medication and she was working 3 jobs. And so she was like cutting her pills in half and stuff. And here's this woman in her 30s, and she would have qualified for expanded Medicare in Florida. But Rick Scott refused to take the money from the federal government to expand Medicare. So truly deeply poor people who have no income at all in Florida qualify for a fairly crummy state Medicare program. And people making over, $18,000, $20,000 a year, whatever the threshold is for Obamacare, they qualify for Obamacare. But that middle ground between, say, $3,000 a year income and $15,000 a year income, and I'm just guessing at the numbers here, but it's in that neighborhood, those folks who are the working poor have no access to health care in the state of Florida because Rick Scott is trying to squeeze Obamacare. He's a Republican, and he's trying to screw Obama because this is like just the official thing. Hey, let's mess with Obama. And Charlene Dill died, among others. Rick Scott has blood on his hands. Greg Abbott has blood on his hands. These Republicans, and the whole bizarre thing is in Texas, when they cut the funding to Planned Parenthood and they cut the funding for women's services in the state, the largely Republican men who did this said they were doing it out of concern for women's health. I mean, how sick and twisted does it get? So anyhow, I saw that story yesterday. It just totally blew my mind. And now this is published in Obstetrics and Gynecology, a peer-reviewed publication. This is not, just some weird speculation. The number of women who have died as a result of pregnancy is more dangerous than abortion. And actually, colonoscopies are more dangerous than abortions. There's some kinds of dental procedures that are more dangerous than abortion. There's lots of things that are more dangerous than abortions. The pregnancy, though, is certainly more dangerous than abortions, and the number. And although this has nothing to do with abortion, this has to do with the wise Republican men of Texas making sure that the women of Texas are barefoot and pregnant at home, rather than in a Planned Parenthood clinic where an actual, healthcare provider could be referred to or could be seen. It's bizarre.